there we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's nice to have all of you. We are here to discuss a really important subject. Now, if you've heard of Baha'u'lláh, you'll know he wrote a lot of writings. And one of the writings Baha'u'lláh wrote is set up in a format called Gleanings. So, in other words, imagine various passages from the writings of Baha'u'lláh and excerpts are taken and put into a book. Gleanings from the writings of Baha'u'lláh contains beautiful key verses that were selected by the guardian of the Baha'i faith, Shoghi Effendi himself. And we're going to be discussing this, and Peter will elaborate a little bit more on what this is. But real quick, welcome everyone. It is June 9, 2024. We're so happy to have all of you. And we're going to start this session on preview of Gleanings from the writings of Baha'u'lláh with Mr. Peter Terry. Peter Terry holds a BA in International Education, grades K through 8, from the University of Massachusetts, and the master's degree in vocal performance from the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. He also started a PhD program at the University of Chicago and a Bachelor of Music program at Oberlin College. His areas of specialized knowledge include pedagogical theory and practice, Western classical music, Jewish, Christian, Islamic, Babi, and Baha'i history, and scripture. Peter Terry has hosted series like The Worlds of God, Baha'i Educators, Genesis, First Book of the Bible. He's published several books, and you can find the books that he's published online at academia.edu, Baha'i-library.com, BahaiTeachings.org, and irfancolloquia.org/publications. I'll say the last one, irfancolloquia.org/publications. With that being said, we welcome Peter to join us and all of you participants for an enriching 1-hour Zoom presentation as we embark on a systemic study of a unique compilation of texts selected and translated by Shoghi Effendi, first published in 1935. This session is designed to introduce participants to the profound insights and thematic richness of these texts, meticulously created by the Guardian to illuminate the core principles and teachings of the Baha'i faith. For further information and for downloadable writings and study materials, please go to clearwaterbaha'is.org, where you can look up this topic and Peter Terry to learn more. The topic, we have posted next to it the links for the study materials, which we welcome you to access to learn more. Again, on clearwaterbaha'is.org. It's posted, and Jeremiah will try to get some links to these pages in the comments, if not in the video description itself, hopefully today. With that being said, Peter, welcome. We're so happy to have you. Mr. Peter Terry.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Let's see. We have people from how many different parts of the world? I don't know where Tahare is from. Why don't you tell us? Where are you from? You have to unmute. Oh, maybe can she unmute herself, or does somebody have to unmute her?
I've allowed unmuting right now.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So Tare, where are you from?
Alapa. I'm from Alaska. I'm correct.
Oh, wow. Alaska. Oh, yeah. Terrific. That's terrific. And Olga, are you really in Russia?
I'm really in Russia, right in it.
How extraordinary. Where in Russia?
This is called Far East. It is close to Japan and China.
Oh, wow. So you're in Siberia.
No, this is even farther than Siberia.
Further.
Further, yeah.
Oh, wow. Extraordinary. So, all right. So we have two people from the north. How about who else here? Anybody from the south? No, I could see a gentleman with headphones on, but I'm not sure who it is because there's no
South
name
meaning
popping up.
what? What south are
Huh?
we talking about? Southern United States or south of the equator?
Well, how about south of Alaska and the peninsula out there in the northeastern part of Siberia? So where are you?
Bulawayo,
Yul Brynner
Zimbabwe.
came from that area, if you know your history. Yul Brynner.
Uh-huh. All right. Well, I welcome all of you from wherever you are, and so let's get started here. What
But
this
don't
is
Florida.
this is
Where as
what
south as you're at, Peter? Florida.
what? Oh
Florida.
yeah, Florida. I don't want to leave out Florida, right? Florida. This is where all the trouble is being made by these guys, right? You know, they're responsible for this. All right. So if you like it, they get the praise, and if you don't like it, then they get the annoyance, right? But but no, they render this terrific service to all of us, and can you imagine? It's like this is a Sunday. What guy in his right mind is sitting in front of a computer talking to us on a Sunday? Isn't this supposed to be a day when he goes and plays with his family and his friends? No, he comes and spends it with us. So guys, I really appreciate this. You know, this is such a gift to the Baha'is of the world that you do this. Oh, it's Peter Burns. Peter Burns, who lives in a tiny island, okay, off Wales, okay, right? Isn't it part of Wales? I think that hand means yes. Let's see. And then we have oh, and Terry didn't tell us where he was from, but anyway, he's in Alabama. Is that how I
Montgomery,
pronounce it?
Alabama. I'm in Montgomery.
Montgomery, Alabama.
Some people call it LA or Lower Alabama.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'm gonna switch over. What we're gonna do here is we're going to start an introduction. Probably get through the whole introduction today, and then I'll do something next weekend. We're going to do 3 weeks of this, and what we're doing is a preview of a course. And what we decided to do 10 years ago, in 2014, I gave the first and only course on the Gleanings for the Wilmette Institute. And due to life situations, I wasn't able to continue with the Wilmette Institute and had to go off and do some things for, you know, to earn a living. And so I didn't go back and do Gleanings again. But this past year, I've just been feeling, you know, both inspired and driven to return to this book because of my appreciation for myself of what it has done for me to become familiar with its contents. So now I'm going to go on script as soon as I can get to my script. Hold on a second here. Let me see. That didn't work. There we go. So I'm gonna begin this introduction without talking about the book. I'll get to that. But I'm going to talk about some specific issues. And in particular, I'm going to ask this question. Is there anything inherently disloyal or disgraceful or just plain dumb about asking questions? Let's consider the facts to come up with a reliable answer to this question. Baha'u'llah wrote most of his tablets to whom? To individuals, many of whom were his followers. And we find that these tablets are full of answers to questions. Sometimes Baha'u'llah cited the question and sometimes just the answer. But he is clearly making it his business to take care of the doubts of his reader. He knows that his reader wants to understand what he has written, what God wants of him, and to be able to distinguish truth from error. This is a big deal. The believer knows that if he doesn't acquire that capacity to choose between good and evil, and if he doesn't protect that capacity from the onslaught of a million arrows of doubt and disagreement, some of which will rise up within him and others rain down upon him almost every day of his life, if he fails to distinguish, he may not earn the good pleasure of his Creator, and he may spend eternity in suffering rather than in joy. He knows this. He fears this. And Baha'u'llah will answer his questions. So now that we've come to an understanding, hopefully, that asking questions is not only encouraged, but it's required. It's the only way we really learn. Let's look into questions about what? What is the greatest doctrinal work of Baha'u'llah's? Not according to me or you, but according to Baha'u'llah and reaffirmed by the Guardian. It's the Kitab-i-Iqan, the Book of Certitude. You see, the purpose of the manifestations in revealing the will of God on planet Earth is not to make our lives difficult, complicated, and unhappy. It is the very opposite of that. The reason why the Creator did not want Adam and Eve and every other man and woman since to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was that once we know about evil, we may well choose evil over good. Because evil often seems like the easiest, the most pleasant, the most fun path at any moment. But if that is the case, why not remove all the rules and let us do whatever we want? Many of us think about that. Because to be happy in the long term requires that we choose good. We could eat sugar all day long and it sure tastes sweet, but if we keep doing that, our teeth will fall out. The Kitab-i-Iqan, the Book of Certitude, is a path to paradise, and that path is based on acquiring certitude that sacrificing the short term for the long term is always the right way to go. The Kitab-i-Iqan is what? It's a response to a set of questions that were posed to Baha'u'llah by one of the uncles of the Bab, who still had doubts about whether his nephew was the Mahdi, the Qa'im, or anything else other than a regular human being. This is a test that befalls lots of people, especially those related to manifestations of God. Think of the relatives of Abraham, of Joseph, of Moses, of Jesus, and also the relatives of Muhammad and the Bab. All of these relatives were just as unappreciative of the Holy One who was born into their family. And Baha'u'llah wasn't an exception either. But we won't go down that and into detail. If questions were not permitted, then surely Baha'u'llah would have told this uncle of the Bab something like this. Sorry, but you aren't permitted to ask questions of me. You must simply believe that your neighbor was who he said he was. And we've all heard that at one time or other in our lives. People who don't want to answer our questions, they just want to tell us to bug off. But Baha'u'llah didn't say that, did he? He answered the uncle's questions, and he answered the questions of hundreds, maybe thousands of people during his 40-year ministry. His eldest son, Abdul-Baha, whom he appointed the center of his covenant, spent his entire ministry answering questions as well. And his great-grandson spent much of his ministry answering questions. The Universal House of Justice does the same. So, let's ask this. Why are we permitted to ask questions? What is the reason for this? Baha'u'llah gives the answer to that question in the Kitab-i-Iqan. Quote, in every age, The reading of the scriptures and holy books is for no other purpose except to enable the reader to apprehend their meaning and unravel their inmost mysteries. Otherwise, reading without understanding is of no abiding profit unto man. Now, I want to tell you, that quote goes on my refrigerator. There's not a week, and there are many, very often it's a daily occurrence that I go back to that quote, because I'm going to have some difficulty understanding something, and I go back because he's assuring me that you have to. That is your obligation. You have to stick with it until you understand it. In his book of laws, the Kitab-i-Iqan, Baha'u'llah answers another question related to this. Can we just avoid reading altogether? Aren't there lots of people who would just love to do that? My kids would often just like, can we just watch videos all day long? Is it really necessary to read the scriptures? Here is Baha'u'llah's response. Recite ye the verses of God every morn and eventide. Whoso faileth to recite them hath not been faithful to the covenant of God and his testament. And whoso turneth away from these holy verses in this day is of those who throughout eternity have turned away from God. Fear ye God, O my servants, one and all. Try not yourselves on much reading of the verses, or on a multitude of pious acts by night and day. For were a man to read a single verse with joy and radiance, it would be better for him than to read with lassitude all the holy books of God, the help and peril of the self-subsisting. Read ye the sacred verses in such measure that ye be not overcome by languor and despondency. I'm going to send you this paper afterwards, and so you're going to be able to look up all of these quotations. But this one is quotation. This is from paragraph 149 of the Kitab-i-Iqan. So Baha'u'llah has given us two answers here. He has told us we have to read every day, twice a day. And he said it doesn't matter how much we read, but it's important the spirit in which we read it. And he's also said another thing, which is reading without understanding is of no abiding profit unto man. So we got some answers here, and they're very, very important answers. And now I think it will be clear to everybody that we have permission to ask questions. And when we ask the right questions, we will receive answers. Let's ask some more questions. And let's work for those answers. First among these, what writings did Shoghi Effendi translate? In 1922, he translated the Will and Testament of Abdu'l-Baha into English. And this is why. The Western Baha'is needed to read this document to understand the authority bestowed upon him as guardian, without which the Baha'i community would have succumbed to fragmentation. And that is a fact. If we had not had a guardian in 1921, the faith would have fallen apart, because there were people who wanted to take it in many different directions. And Abdu'l-Baha talks about this in the Tablets of the Divine Plan. He says, without the center of the covenant, the unity of the community is destroyed. So this was a very, very important thing for him to do, and he did it in 1922, within months after the death of Abdu'l-Baha in November of 1921. And after that, this is quite astonishing. After that, he did not translate any more of the writings of Abdu'l-Baha. Instead, what did he translate? So we're going to answer this question. In 1929, he completed the translation of the Arabic and Persian hidden words. In 1931, he completed the translation of the Kitab-i-Iqan. In 1935, he completed the translation of the Gleanings from the writings of Baha'u'llah. And in 1941, Epistle to the Son of the Wolf. He lived for another 16 years after translating this last book of Baha'u'llah. And while he translated a few verses here and there, his work as a translator of books was complete. Now, we can surmise that he chose to translate the hidden words because it may be regarded as a summary of his essential teachings, as indicated in the exordium to the Arabic hidden words. The exordium is that short paragraph that precedes the Arabic hidden words. And perhaps also because it is relatively easy for believers of all educational and cognitive levels to appreciate and understand. And we also understand that he translated the Kitab-i-Iqan because it is the most important doctrinal work of Baha'u'llah. We can jump ahead and also recognize that he translated Epistle to the Son of the Wolf because it was the last book written by Baha'u'llah. So why did he take the time and make the effort to collect texts from many tablets written by Baha'u'llah, to translate them into a uniform style, and to order them in a particular way? In reading and particularly in studying Gleanings from the writings of Baha'u'llah, we will discover the answers to those questions and to many of our questions about the faith. As we have seen in the passages cited before, there is no shortcut for acquiring this knowledge from God. There are no cliff notes. There's no AI summary. We have to read the verses of God every morning and evening and strive for understanding, because Baha'u'llah intends his writings to be intelligible, to be comprehended. Oh, yes, there are no priests, no interpreters, apart from the two interpreters who came and went, Abdu'l-Baha and Shoghi Effendi, and who mostly left reading the writings to us. They did not write detailed commentaries of the writings of Baha'u'llah. They left it to us to discern the meanings that are found in those words. And they gave us the assurance that we can understand this language of the divine. So we shouldn't expect that any experts of any kind will come and open the doors for us. That's our job. As the Zen Buddhists put it, chop wood, carry water. That's what they say. Before you were enlightened, chop wood, carry water. After you're enlightened, chop wood, carry water. Our responsibilities as human beings don't really change. We still have the obligation to put in the work. And in our case, read the writings morning and evening, strive for understanding. So what we can be sure of is that the Guardian intended that this collection called Gleanings be a daily source of instruction, illumination, and inspiration for all of us. As Baha'u'llah wrote so often, the Word of God has tremendous power, but it only has that power when we read it and we contemplate it, when we reflect upon it. One of those wonderful brief statements that he has made that talks about this principle is in the Kitab-i-Iqan. It's the one that I'm sure all of you are familiar with. 1 hour's reflection is preferable to 70 years of pious worship. That is a huge statement from a manifestation. From this manifestation, who revealed more prayers than all the others put together. That is a huge statement from a manifestation who expects us to pray every day, to not leave those prayer books left, on the shelves, but to take them out and read them and speak them and intone them and chant them and sing them Our devotional life is very, very important in the eyes of Baha'u'llah. But think if worshiping God and if chanting those verses is so important, how much more important it is for us to reflect about the meaning of the verses that he has revealed. So I wanted to make a suggestion to you, and that's what this first session is really all about, is to introduce you to some tools and to make issue a challenge, really. I guess it's more of a challenge. I thought it would be fun for us to begin our study of Gleanings together by discovering the best known tablets of Baha'u'llah according to Shoghi Effendi. I thought we could compare that list with the list of tablets that are found in Gleanings. So that tells you two things. It tells you we have a list of the best known tablets of Baha'u'llah according to Shoghi Effendi, and we do, and a copy of that list is either already on the website or it will be on the Clearwater website. It also tells us that we have a list of all the tablets found in Gleanings, and we have that as well. And that is in the form of an Excel spreadsheet, which is also either now or very soon will be available on the website. So I'm supplying you, all of you, with these two lists. One is a Google Doc. The second is an Excel spreadsheet. They are copies of documents I already have, and you can't make a mistake on them. When you open one, it's your copy. You do whatever you want with it. Okay? So don't worry. Don't feel like, oh, I better not do this. I better not do that. You know, that thing where you always ask yourself when you're going to study a Baha'i book, am I going to write in the margins? Well, my Baha'i teacher never worried about that. And his books had all these, penned in and penciled in comments in the margins and in between paragraphs and every place he could fit them. But a lot of people feel like, no, this is sacred. These are sacred verses. I'm not going to write on it, and besides, somebody else in my family might want to read it too. So I don't want to be doing that. But this is great because these are documents that are for your use. So we don't have a conventional classroom, so you're not really in a position right now at the moment to pair up with somebody else and do this together. But if you feel inclined to do this exercise with other people, you can go find somebody in your community or somebody through social media, somebody through one of the Facebook groups, and do this as a project together. So here's what I'm suggesting. You get these documents, the two lists, and the first task is to find out which of the passages, the tablets that are actually cited in Gleanings are found among the best known tablets. That's number one. Find out. That means you're going to have to go and compare the two lists and find out which are in both lists. Then next is you're going to have to figure out which of these best known tablets have been translated, because you'll see, for example, there's a tablet that is one of the best known tablets of Baha'u'llah. By the way, there are 154 of them, okay? And it's called the Tablet of Wisdom. So the Tablet of Wisdom is a very, very important tablet of Baha'u'llah that talks about science, it talks about history, it talks about philosophy, and it has a perspective that's completely different from what we're used to in most of the world. Most people have never heard of this perspective, and it's vital that we understand it because it's transformative. It really changes the way you look at where we come from and where we're going. So the tablet of wisdom is called Loy-Hikmat. And Loy-Hikmat will be on that list of best known tablets of Baha'u'llah. And if you look for Loy-Hikmat online, you will find out that it's translated. It wasn't translated by The Guardian. It was not included in Gleanings, but it was translated later on. And you'll find out where to find it. And I'm giving you the URLs about where to find this information. So what you can actually do with your list, and you don't have to do all of the list in 1 week or even 2 weeks. You spend it as much time as you want on it. You can find out for yourself, where are the translated books to be found online that I can download to my computer, or that I can go and research online anytime once I've got the URL. And you put that on your list, and now you've got directions. Now you've got a map, so to speak, of how it is you can get back to find that when you want to look at it again. And so I wanted to recommend, this is a preliminary step that any scholar, and we're all scholars, right? We have to realize that. You know, sometimes people talk about scholars of the faith. You are the scholars of the faith. There are no scholars apart from you. We don't have any priesthood. We don't have people, and just because somebody has a PhD doesn't make them more knowledgeable about the Baha'i writings or Baha'i history than if they don't have a PhD. In fact, the person I know to be the most knowledgeable about Baha'i history doesn't have a PhD. As far as I know, she doesn't even have a master's degree, and nobody cares. Nobody cares, because her comprehension of Baha'i history is something to swoon at. It is so impressive. And so I want to encourage you to understand this is a first step. It's a first step that you want to see the terrain. You want to understand what is it, where do the passages and gleanings fall among the best known tablets of Baha'u'llah? And are there complete translations of tablets that are cited in the Gleanings? Are there tablets cited in the Gleanings more than once? For example, is the Kitab-i-Iqan cited in Gleanings? I'm not going to tell you. You're going to find out for yourself. And then once you find out, you're going to find out if it is cited someplace else, was the whole book translated? And was it translated by Shoghi Effendi and published, or was it not? And if it was not translated by him, then who did translate it? And one of the tremendous riches we have is that our translations are now so diverse. There's such a rich collection now of translations that you really have to run to keep up with the news on this subject. For example, once you become, on the list, let's say, you get notified about every new translation that's being put on BahaiReferenceLibrary.com. Every time. It's a stunning thing. It's like a monthly occurrence that we get this download of all these materials. And this is before they're published in print. They just put them up online and make them available free for people. Publishing takes a while. We get them right away, as soon as they're ready to release them. We've in some cases, they're revisions of documents that we've studied, that we've read many times in the past. In other cases, they're brand new pieces we've never seen in our lives. But whether they're like old friends or new friends, doesn't matter. It's such a joy to meet them again, the old friends. And the new friends, such a joy to meet them for the first time. So I wanted to recommend to you that we do that as a project together. I'm going to do it too. And that we do that over the course of the next 2 weeks, and then compare our experiences on our third session, which will be on June 23rd. But if you have any questions or any concerns, or especially if you have any frustrations, I really hope that you will either send me an email or that you'll bring them up next week. Now, as far as sending me an email, let me just put my email in the chat, okay? Let me put it right there now. Some of you already know this email, but I'm not going to assume that most of you do. So let's see. For those of you who don't know how to look at the chat, and there may be somebody who doesn't know how to do this, it's peterry19@gmail.com. Okay, I just shared it with everybody. And there's a great big sort of stop sign that says PT in white letters. All right, so that's where the message is. So that's if you have a question, a concern, or particularly a frustration. I've been doing this for so many years, it's like sleeping. It's like drinking coffee. Hooray for drinking coffee. So it's very natural for me, but I don't assume that other people have that same degree of, facility and comfort. But you can learn to get very quickly how to do that. And then the idea of comparing two long lists of things is not going to be, overwhelming. It's going to be, wow, this is going to be fun. And it is fun. I have to tell you, just going and editing the list of the best known books, which, by the way, I found on a terrific website. That website is called Ocean of Lights. Ocean of Lights. You look it up anytime, and what you will find is the original Arabic or Persian of the tablets of Baha'u'llah. What you will also find there are whatever translations have been done into English or the other language. See, for example, you may have a tablet that's written in Arabic and there's a Persian translation of it. And there's also an English. So both the English and the Persian will be available, as well as the Arabic original. This is the case for a lot of the books on that site. So you can go to that site and you don't have to read the Persian or Arabic. You can read the English. But it's a website that's important for people to know about because you have friends who can read Persian and Arabic. And for many of them, they would prefer to read the original. So I've now described the exercise that I was going to recommend to you, and now I'd love to have a conversation about Gleanings, about your whatever experiences that you've had with Gleanings in the past, and with any questions that you have about this project that I've recommended. Basically, I want to open the floor to you and then respond to you as best I can, and allow the other people who are in this group to respond as well. So you should feel free to notify Jeremiah that you would like to speak by maybe holding up a hand or something like that, and then he'll unmute you. He doesn't want to unmute everybody at the same time because then we end up talking over each other.
There's a question from Eileen in the chat. So I want to read her question here. She's asking, where do I access the Excel doc and the Word doc? Peter, you're muted if you're talking.
Yeah. Yeah, Eileen, both of those should be on the website. They may not be on the website yet, but Jeremiah has them and he can post them. I think it's more efficient for him to put them on the Clearwater website, and then you just come back once they're posted and find them there than for me to send them, try to put them in the chat, because then I'd have to go and find them on my computer and stick them there.
So that would be Baha'is.org for the Clearwater site. And further, we're going to try to put on the video, the description of the video, the links that are required. So Jeremiah will be working on that.
Okay, so let me describe again the documents that are going to be there. There's going to be a document that's going to be on the website that is a collection of study guides, of notes, of information about the people who are mentioned and the places that are mentioned and the themes that are mentioned in the Gleanings. That's been all kinds of work that's been done by scholars over the years, okay? And that collection was done by somebody named Ehsan Bayat. And I found that on Baha'u'llibrary.com, and I sent that document, and that's going to be on the Clearwater website. Now, that document is just a wonderful resource to have, to be able to check out anytime you want, because you're just going to see what people have done. All right, that's number one. Number two, the Excel document that I mentioned is called an Expandable Sources. Okay, Expandable Sources. Why is it called expandable? Because you're going to expand it. So you're going to have some questions, and so you're going to go and do some research, and then you'll insert the new information into your copy of the spreadsheet. And then eventually, when you get around to it and you feel like sharing with other people, you can do that. But your copy is not going to compromise the original in any sort of way, so don't worry if you end up deleting something. It's not a big deal. The idea was to give you a copy so you can see for yourself without, and still be able to edit it, still be able to write notes, you know, and able to add things. Because, for example, you'll see the names of people. You'll see the names of people and you say, I don't know anything about this person. Okay, so where can I go to try to learn about this person? Okay, so there's Baha'u'lláh, there's Wikipedia, there's Google. Just do a Google search. There's, you know, there are resources out there, and you don't necessarily have to know where they are in order to find them. You just start looking around, and you come back and you say, I've got a list of 10 things that I tried to check out this week, and I can only find one of them. So where am I supposed to find the other things? Or you write me an email, don't even wait for a week. Write me an email and say, you know, I'm having trouble locating this particular individual because his name looks like everybody else. And so where should I look for him? And I've been around long enough in this process that I probably can find it. Okay. And if I can't, then I can certainly find somebody else who can find it. So the Excel spreadsheet, which is the expandable one on the sources of Gleanings, because Gleanings is a compilation of passages from Baha'u'llah in many different books. That's one. Then there's another one. There's an expandable index. because have you noticed there are a lot of books now that are being published without an index? So it's really hard to do any kind of research into the contents of the book, the topics, the subjects, really hard. Or who are the people? Where are they mentioned on what page? Well, we've got a terrific index for Gleanings, and that is only going to get better because I'm finding other indexes and I'm going to combine them. So there'll be one index that's got all these different references, and you're going to find things. As you're reading, you will find passages that relate to a certain topic, for example. Let's say, that talk about the nature of the manifestation of God, or life after death, or dreams. And you're going to go back to the index and say, well, Peter, that page number is not listed in this index. Okay, so they missed it. Add it yourself. Okay? This is part of the fun. We're going to discover things and we're going to create our own indexes. So there's an expandable index, there's an expandable sources of Gleanings. And there are probably 3 other things that I can't think of at the moment, but they'll all be there. And all of these resources are going to be for everybody to use. Free to use, free to download. And they will have the Google Docs have a particular kind of link that it gives you open access to that document. And so that should work very nicely for you. I see Peter's got a question.
Oh yes, Peter. I used to carry Gleanings with me quite a lot, and it's so profound. And even I think it's about page 84, maybe 88, where Baha'u'llah refers to Jesus Christ and his sacrifice, It's just so moving and profound for Christians as well,
Exactly. I agree, Peter. This is one of the absolute blessings of reading Gleanings cover to cover. Slowly, carefully, this is the most profound education in Baha'i teachings that I can imagine. The Guardian brought all of his knowledge and his training, and he'd been to Oxford, he'd been to the American school in Beirut. By that time, he was absolutely fluent in Arabic, in Persian, in English, as well as in French. But his capacity to organize material is absolutely stunning. And it really helps us to get organized so that when we need to find that quote of Baha'u'llah that says this, and we know it's either we need it for ourselves, or we've got a neighbor, or we've got a seeker, we've got a family member who really needs that verse. The more you immerse yourself in the Gleanings, the more you know where everything is. And the index helps with that as well. Yes, Peter Burns does have the voice of a Shakespearean actor. Have you worked at the Bard? No, I think he's got a gift.
No, I have a Liverpool accent.
A Liverpool accent, yes. Yes, but markedly different from the Liverpool boys that I'm familiar with, Boy, those Beatles could sound about as American as you can get. Yes, Dean's got a question.
Are you hearing me? I think you probably are. I'll assume so.
Yes, I hear you.
I'm frustrated, and I think you said something that might give me something I want. Of course, I'm thrilled with the Baha'i Reference Library, and I love seeing new things come out, but I don't know when they come out. I have to go look there and, is that something new or is that not something new? And I have to count the passages and see if are already had this one if they've updated it. You said there's some form of list one can get on to be notified, or how does that work?
Well, I'll tell you, I know a few people who notify me. They're on the list. I'm not on the list, but they are. But this is something I'll look into. Okay, I'll make note of that, and I'll try to find out how we get notified. I will also want to find out if there are any messages that regularly come out from the World Center that say, you know, this month or last month or 5 months ago, whenever, we issued this, that, and the other thing. Because even if they do it after the fact, it would be helpful to have some sort of a list of names and then a description of what that name covers. Because in some cases, what they've done is they've made compilations of similar works. For example, there's a new book they've created, which is a compilation of the mystical treatises of Baha'u'llah. And so now, instead of having 7 valleys or 4 valleys separately as a book, it's part of this compilation that has several other books. And once you understand where to find these new translations, it's much easier. Let me do some work on that. I'll report back to you next week. Let's see.
Perfect.
Do I see another hand? I don't see another hand, but I'm sure somebody's got a question. You've got a question, but you're shy, right?
I have a hand raised.
Okay, wonderful, Olga.
Well, my question is not really about the gleanings yet. I'm sorry, it's a simple question, but it's something that I'm really interested in. When you were speaking about reading scripture, and you mentioned that it's not the quantity that matters, but the spirit in which we read the scripture. And what did you mean by this? What kind of spirit should it be?
Okay, so yes, thank you for bringing that back to me. This is a passage. It's number 149 in the Kitab-i-Iqan. And actually, if Jeremiah or John is there, and you could search for, I don't want to take time now to search for that quotation. You could find it very easily on Baha'i Reference or Baha'i.org, and just find that text and post it up here to the share it with us all. It's 149 in the Kitab-i-Iqan, and the whole paragraph describes what our obligation is, but the context of that obligation and the fact that it's quality, not quantity, that matters. It doesn't, Baha'u'llah is not asking us to just read until our eyes are hurting and until our brains can't absorb any more information, and until you know, there's been a tendency in religious practice to take things to extremes that the manifestations never asked us to do. And we think if we do more than he asked for, then that makes us holier. But it's a ridiculous idea. It really is. When he says, I want this from you, he means what he says, right? He's not asking, you know, this was a real problem for some of the early Christians who believed that because Jesus used a metaphor for sacrifice, that they didn't understand it as a metaphor. They thought actually when he says, you know, if your eye offends you, then remove it. You know, if your hand offends you, then cut it off. If your tongue offends you, cut it off. They had interpreted this physically, literally, and so they did these things to themselves. And when And literally, there were Christians who did this, who believed that as part of their faithfulness to the gospel of Jesus Christ, that because he said that your option was either that you were going to be, you were either going to get married and be with one person for life, or you don't get married. And he says it's okay. And the way he describes don't get married is he said you can be a eunuch. Because the only men who were not married at that time couldn't get married because they couldn't have children. Those were eunuchs, right? And so he described that as a eunuch, and he says there are many who are eunuchs, through nature or through some kind of a mishap that happened in their lives. And then there are people who are eunuchs for the kingdom of God. So you see some crazy Christian said, oh, I'm going to be a eunuch for the kingdom of God, and I'm going to castrate myself. And they did this, my friends. They did this. And there are still Christians who do this. And why? Because they interpreted it in the wrong way, and because they thought if I go the extra mile, Jesus asked me to go 1 mile, I'm going to go 50 miles. I'll show him how great a Christian I am. Well, Baha'u'llah really is giving this word of wisdom. You don't become a better Baha'i by doing more than I asked for. You become a better Baha'i by doing what I ask you to do regularly, because that's what you were asked to do. That is what is going to feed you spiritually so that you're able to be a Baha'i, because being a Baha'i is what it's all about, and being a Baha'i is a spiritual practice for life and for eternity. And so I'm not getting that text, so I may have to go and digress for a moment here and get it for you, because nobody else is getting it. So let me see. Just give me a moment here. Somebody else talk, and I'll find you that texts.
There is something I wanted to add to what you were saying, if I can. There is a quotation from the Kitab-i-Iqan, were anyone to wash the feet of all mankind, and were he to worship God in the forests, valleys, and mountains, upon high hills and lofty peaks, to leave no rock or tree, no clod of earth, but was a witness to his worship. Yet should the fragrance of my good pleasure not be inhaled from him, his works would never be acceptable unto God. So it's not really about the quantity, of what you're doing, but there is something else, and I have a question about this. This too, I can say that I really understand this part clearly. Yet should the fragrance of my good pleasure not be inhaled from him? And how do we achieve that so that our works can be acceptable unto God? This is the part I don't understand clearly. But the general sense is that it's not about really the quantity.
So quantity is one aspect of it. It's both. Baha'u'llah keeps coming back to this point. You find this in all the writings. It is our relationship with him. It is our attitude towards God and the manifestation that is really, it's so central. Because if we go through the actions, for example, you might spend your whole life fasting during the fast. And you may think, well, I did good because I fasted. I made that sacrifice at the appropriate time, and I feel good about it. But that's not the purpose of the fast, to feel good about yourself doing the right thing. That's not the purpose. The purpose of the fast is to do something for the good pleasure of God. That means to make God happy. That's our purpose. Our purpose is to love God so much that if he asked us to fast all year long, we do it happily. We would do it happily. In one of his tablets, in the Gleanings, in one of those tablets, he talks about that very thing. He says, my true believers are the ones who, if it was requested of them to fast for the rest of their lives, they would, and with joy. So it's all about this relationship with God. And you know, on the second page of the Kitab-i-Iqan, Baha'u'llah says something so beautiful. He says, follow my commandments for love of my beauty. It's all about love. All about love. And this is what links all the revelations together. Because you think about what is the most important verse of the entire Torah, of the entire Old Testament, that is recited by Jews, every time they say prayers. It is Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. That means, hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. And after that, he says, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy strength. And when Jesus was asked, what is the greatest commandment? What did he say? The same thing. He quoted this verse from Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5. He quoted that exact verse. And Baha'u'llah, in effect, does the same thing all through the hidden words, all through his writings. He's reminding us this is all about love. This is all about awakening the love of God in our hearts. And that awakening happens when we do his will. It's that simple. This is how we show that we love him, is doing what he asks of us. And this is why, in the Bible, it talks about the great training for children is to learn to be obedient to their parents. Because if they learn to be obedient to their parents who love them, who shower them with love every day, then when it comes time, when they become adults and their obligation is now to love God, they're ready to love God because they first learned how to love one who was so close to them, so intimate, so very physically present, that now they come to understand it's possible to love another who is distant, whom I don't touch in the same way, who doesn't give me the same immediate reward that I want. So I hope that is an answer for you. I want to let me share screen here so that I can show you the passage. Okay, let me see. I'm going to go here and I'm going to go there. Let's see. Why am I not seeing this? Okay. Oh, I see. It's because I'm not doing that. Okay. So now I'm going to share screen and I'm going to do. Oh, but it's not showing me what I want to show. All right. So maybe I'm just going to have to read it. Okay? Because I can't figure out how to share screen and I don't want to futz around with technology because I'm so bad at it. Okay? So let me read the full paragraph of 149 of the Kitab-i-Iqan. Recite ye the verses of God every morn and eventide. Whoso faileth to recite them hath not been faithful to the covenant of God and his testament. And whoso turneth away from these holy verses in this day is of those who throughout eternity have turned away from God. Fear ye God, O my servants, one and all. Pride not yourselves on much reading of the verses or on a multitude of pious acts by night and day. For were man to read a single verse with joy and radiance, it would be better for him than to read with lassitude all the holy books of God, the help in peril, the self-subsisting. Read ye the sacred verses in such measure that ye be not overcome by languor and despondency. Lay not upon your souls that which will weary them and weigh them down, but rather what will lighten and uplift them, so that they may soar on the wings of the divine verses towards the dawning place of his manifest signs. This will draw you nearer to God, did ye but understand. By the way, the very next passage, beautiful thing, 150, Baha'u'llah says, teach your children the verses revealed from the heaven of majesty and power, so that in the most melodious tones they may recite the tablets of the All-Merciful in the alcoves within the mashriqal askars. Whoever hath been transported by the rapture born of adoration, adoration for thy name, the most compassionate, will recite the verses of God in such wise as to captivate the hearts of those yet wrapped in slumber. This power of the verses of God is something that is very much part of Judaism, very much part of Islam, but for many Christians, it's not so evident. They were not brought up in families where there was much reading of the Bible. Even if they did read the Bible, it was read sort of prosaically. There was no attempt to read it or to chant it or to sing it and to make beautiful sounds. In our churches, we've in the last generation or so have moved towards doing sort of popular music, folk music style, where basically the church music sounds like everything else. And so many people were not brought up in this tradition of hearing the verses from God beautifully presented that moves your heart, that makes you feel this love for God through this special medium of music, of sound, particularly the sound of the human voice. But it's something that I think that for all those Baha'is who do not come from the tradition of immersion in the verses of God, they have the opportunity to discover this for themselves. And not just by reading, chanting, or listening to the chanting of verses of Baha'u'llah, but also by hearing the beautiful settings of musical settings of the verses of other faiths, of the Quran, of the Bible. They're, for that matter, of the Bhagavad Gita, they're absolutely gorgeous music that has come in all of those religious traditions. And one of the great bounties of having recognized Baha'u'llah and seeing the unity of all these religions is all of these religions are my religion. This is my faith. You know, the Buddhist is not separate from me. I am a Buddhist. You know, the Hindu is not separate from me. I am a Hindu. And so their music is not their music. It's my music. And this is a great joy to understand that we are so tribal in the way that we've been brought up and come to think of ourselves, that we belong to some tiny subset of humanity, and we have these very particular tastes, and we have to stick with them because that's my identity. And then you come to this revelation of Baha'u'llah, and he says, no, your identity is to be an angel and to see beauty in all things. And then you have this enormous expansion of your universe of consciousness. Absolutely phenomenal. I remember the experience for the first time of hearing Russian Orthodox music. Oh my God, it was absolutely stunning. And still to this day, when I hear this great music performed very well. It's like Rachmaninoff, for example. When I hear these, you can hear it. You can't hear it on the radio. Now that's something you can't. You have to actually go on YouTube or else get yourself some recordings. But you listen to that, and you don't have to know a word of Slavonic or a word of Russian to be able to be touched by this word of God set to music. That it absolutely speaks directly to your soul. And just like Baha'u'llah says, it lifts you up. You fly, your soul flies when you hear this. And this can be said equally for times that I've heard chanted verses from the Vedas or from the Upanishads or from the Bhagavad Gita when I was in India and when I've been in the United States and I've gone to a darshan and I've heard them. The same thing, the same lighting of the soul from this musical rendition. We have all of these are available to us. It's all for free. We just have to go looking. Molly wants to ask a question. So, Molly, do you know how to unmute, or should somebody unmute you? I don't know how to unmute. Let's see. There, I just sent you a message, Molly, to unmute so that you can ask your question. Well, maybe she stepped away. So somebody else. We have Regina, we have Barbara, we have Tahare and Tineke. Did I pronounce your name properly? It's a wonderful name. Tineke Vernhout.
I'm a mute. I finally got it.
Okay, okay, that's me. Tineke.
Yeah.
Tineke Vernhout.
Yeah. I'm a mute now.
Go ahead, Molly, please.
Yeah, the new translations, are they approved by the translators in Haifa? So
this is how things go now. We have translations which are being done regularly, full time. There are staff that work on this, and they're located in the World Center. Well, actually, some of the translators are scattered all over the world, and they send in translations, and then a committee looks at it, or sometimes the committee is an international committee, and they go and they send the things around, and they go and they improve upon them until they really feel that, okay, we're ready to publish this. Then it goes to the World Center, then it's formatted in a certain way so that it fits the exact formatting that they have for their previous publications. And then they send out a notification, they put them to Baha'i reference or Baha'i.org/library. I think that's the URL for it. So this is what they're doing now. What they're going to do tomorrow, I can't tell you. I have no idea. But what they're trying to do is get the text out to us. That's one thing. Another thing is because our appetite for reading the writings has grown so tremendously over the last several decades that we now have some very, very talented people at translating. And they're making provisional translations.
Yes, that's
provisional. And the provisional translations are all we have permission to do this. There's no sort of, we shouldn't feel that a provisional translation is naughty or bad form or disobedient, because it's none of those things. No, they're simply the work of an individual. And the work of the individual is posted on a website. It's posted, and there are various places to find those. One of my favorites is a young man named Adib Masumian. And Adib Masumian lives in Texas, and he's like 25 or something. And ever since he was like 18, he's been involved in Baha'i studies. And this kid he's amazing. And his translations are beautiful. The older, it's very interesting. You have some people who have been college professors teaching Arabic and Persian, and they're like, Adib is just so he's like a miracle child, okay? And so, and he keeps turning out stuff all the time. Like what he did, he had a project where he translated the talks of Abdul Baha in Europe in 1912 and 1913, never before made available in English. He translated those. Those have now been published by George Ronald Press in England. Go look for it, my friends. It's, first of all, not only will the translations will be totally reliable, because the guy, his Arabic and Persian is like his English. It's the same for him. His fluency is exactly the same. But he also does all the homework that really matters, because he provides the footnotes that give the context. So you learn all about where Abdul Baha said that, who did he say it to, you know, what else was he doing that day? Where did he go next? Where else did he talk about the same topic? Those are the kind of things that people ask. Those are the questions that come up. He doesn't leave those unanswered. He puts those right in the footnotes so that anybody who wants to know can find out right away. So, provisional translations, that's something you should understand. Provisional translations don't come from the World Center, are not published in the collection of the World Center texts, because once they come from the World Center, they are authorized. That means the committee that's working under the supervision of the Universal House of Justice has gone through this very, very carefully, and they've given the best they can. It doesn't mean it's perfect. It just means that it's the best they possibly can. Whereas the provisional translation is usually done by one person, maybe two people. And sure, it's the best they can do. But it's not quite the same as having a whole committee of people who are working together and who fine-tune things until they work out all the kinks. But the reality is that Baha'u'llah wrote 20,000 tablets. Listen to my 20,000 tablets. So, you know, anybody who's a provisional translator is not going to sit around and spend a year on one tablet, unless it's 300 pages long, then maybe. But generally speaking, he's going to move from one tablet to the next. As soon as he's got, I think, a working understanding, and he thinks it's flows, the translation is pretty good, he's going to put it out there. And then there's a translation list. There's a list for translators that anybody can join. And we have lively conversations about the translations of people on the list. They submit them to each other. They say, what do you think about this? Do you think I should use a different word here or a different word there? And we talk about this, and we help people to improve their provisional translations. So again, provisional translations found differently. And by next time, I will give you a list of where you can find provisional translations. As far as the translations coming from the World Center, they're all going to Baha'i.org/library or Baha'i Reference. You can get it either one of those things, either URL will give you the same results. But I'm going to find out how we can get notifications, and so we can get clarity about the new publications coming out.
Thank you, Terry.
You're
Dean
welcome.
has his hand raised.
I don't know whether this is his previous raised hand or he put up his hand a second time. But Dean, if this is your second time, go ahead.
Yep, second time. Three things. One of the tablets that's quoted in book 6 is, the service of the friends belongs to God, not to them. You know, we tend to get attached to what we do and think it matters, and think we get, you know, whereas, and that, like the prayer for no ruse makes what you said very clear earlier about, you know, that's the acceptance that matters, not the act. Something you might want to tell people about, besides the Abdu'l-Baha in Europe book, which is published in print, hasn't made it to electronic yet, there's a supplement available on Baha'i Library containing a whole lot of other translations done by Ahmad Sorab. So that's a really cool thing that is part of his work. Adib Masumian translated all that, put all that together, and put it up there. With regard to your tablets, and I suspect I know the answer to this, something I've always wanted to read and don't think I'm going to probably be able to is the Kitab-i-Badi, which is Baha'u'llah's largest work and his refutation of the attacks of those who were his defense of his faith against the Babis who didn't follow him. And I always thought that would be cool, but I'm assuming there is no version of that anywhere.
It's being worked on. It's being worked on, but it's such a massive tome, and because of the subjects that are covered within it, which a lot of them have to do with the Bab's writings, or have to do with the Shoghi writings, the writings of Sheikh Ahmad and Sayyid Kazim, it's very complicated. It's very complicated stuff. You got to get it right, and it's a huge book. So when anybody decides that they're going to work on that, I'm not sitting here and counting the days. I'm not counting certainly not the hours. And I've heard about these. Sometimes a particular scholar will take on a huge book. Like there was the most important book written by Abul Fazl Golpagani, who was the great apologist and historian of the faith of the time of Abdul Baha. Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha. I know that a scholar's been working on that for about 30, 40 years. But I don't know if he'll finish, because it's such a huge challenge. It's so much work. And you know what? Life goes on. You have other obligations. Most people have jobs, and every translator I know has a job. Sometimes they have brief periods of time where they're employed by the World Center to do translation, but the World Center doesn't generally hire people for long periods of time, because they understand if you're going to put money away for your retirement, or you want to put your kids through school, or you want to actually buy a house, you can't do that on the money you're going to earn from doing translations at the World Center. So you got to get on with your life and take care of your worldly obligations as well. So you will. One of the things we have to understand about this process of reading the writings is that we have access to a vast treasury of writings already. And if you tried to go and find all of them and read all of them, you won't succeed. There's that much already that's available. And I'm talking about Baha'u'llah, Abdu'l-Baha, and Shoghi Effendi. And if you go into the Bab, even more. The reality, what's already available is beyond the capacity of any individual to completely read and absorb. So don't worry if you're going to miss out on something. We have eternity. And if God wants us to recite the word of God, if he wants us to read that word morning and evening when we're in this world, I have a hunch that we're going to be reading the writings in the next world. And I certainly hope so, because if it gives us this much joy in this world, it will give us much more joy in the next world, when our spiritual faculties will be that much more refined, and we won't have the worldly distractions that beset us every day and take away from our ability to immerse ourselves in those verses.
Peter, thank you so much for all that you've been able to share with us today. And of course, all the participants, all the questions that people had, that they contributed to the session today. We are getting to that point where we need to close out. So
yes.
If we could make some closing remarks to close out.
So my closing remarks are really that I'm very eager to see what you will do with this proposal that I made to all of you. And you're welcome to contact me at any time you like through my email. If at some point you want to talk with me, we can arrange a talk through Messenger. Facebook Messenger has got a good way of doing things. Some people prefer WhatsApp. Some people prefer Google something. I don't even know all the different ways that people like to do it. I'm willing to do it anyway, as long as you show me what it is. So I'm available for communication, and we're going to see each other in a week, and I will have prepared another talk for you, and we can also at that time talk about the process that you went through in looking up these books, the best known books of Baha'u'llah and the books cited in the Gleanings. Okay, have a great week. Allah Abha, and I wish you the best.
Allah Abha.